when we talk about impact fees, we first have to understand that the way impact fees were put into place on the City Council, they're not big enough to work. And I think if you talk to people on both sides of the political spectrum, including one of the individuals who first initiated the conversation about impact fees, they were much larger when they were first initiated. So first you have to have a real conversation. If you're going to introduce them, if you're going to have them, are they large enough to really have an impact? That's the first question. Right now, I think when we talk about impact fees, the number one responsibility, the number one priority that City Council should address, and as a community we should work together on, is how we get people back to work. People in the middle class, people in poverty, how we keep our young educated people here. Anything that the city does moving forward that sends a sign to business that we are not welcome to their efforts, that we are not friendly to their efforts, that we don't want to work with them, is something that I'm against. Anything that helps bring jobs to the middle class is something that I support. We heard from the business community directly. They said that these impact fees are an indication and a sign that Las Cruces is not open and welcoming to business. Again, it'd be a different conversation if they were large enough to actually work. But everyone knows, and we have to be honest about this, everyone knows the impact fees at the levels that they're at aren't large enough to actually have a direct impact. So of the two scenarios, I say we continue working the way that we are currently working.
First off, I believe that the amounts that we charge for the impact fees are correct. In fact, regarding the roads, there was a comment by one of the developers, Mr. Benz, who felt that he still could do the roads cheaper. But I had actually reached out to him and called him. I'd asked him specifically, Eddie, we're working on this. Can you at least tell us what you think about these prices? He refused to give that to me. He suggested I contact Smith & Gary, Burn Construction, and Highland Enterprises. And because I wanted to make sure that we weren't overcharging or undercharging. And I felt that's a significant price. The drainage impact fee is strictly for Arroyo Crossings only. Many times you saw where the residents in the Sonoma Ranch Boulevard area, we couldn't complete it because we were having a difficult time with the developers as who was going to pay for it. By doing this, is going to be, it's a minimal amount, but it's enough to build the Arroyo Crossings. And then of course the public safety fee is something there that is spread out throughout the entire city. And we feel that the analysis that we were given is a fire department should be able to service 15,000 people. And so the amount that was brought up, or the amount that was used, was brought by the consultants and felt that this was a fair price. And I actually kind of added it up and came up with pretty much the same thing. So I feel that the fees that are being charged are all fair, adequate.
I'm going to first start with a little background as to why impact fees were even a discussion. By law, we have to do land use assumptions every 10 years, and that was done in 2006 and was moving forward through the committee. And in that land use assumption, it tells you what the prediction is for the growth of the community in commercial and residential. We approved the land use assumptions 5 years after it was started in January, February of this year. In the first review, and this had many council reviews before the final impact fee vote, showed that that would have been 3 times the amount that is for a residential home and for a commercial home. And those reports are on record. And so through the discussion over council and the economic change, council kind of downsized those amounts. And Mr. Huerta has a point. That's not enough to pay for what has to be done. Secondly, the arroyos, as far as the city goes, we passed an ordinance 4 years ago that the developer or the property owner and the city split 50-50, and that's how the Arroyo Crossings were done on Sonoma Ranch Boulevard. I think that's a fair way to get things done, and it's not an impact to business. The bottom line, business is the one that's going to hurt in this. The developer always pays for the roads and all the infrastructure and passes that on to the consumer. But when a business has to pay an additional $250,000 before they turn a shovel of dirt, is unfair and very unfriendly to new business who would look at Las Cruces.
First off, let me just say, the Moongate situation is currently under litigation, so I have to be somewhat careful, but I'll disclose to you what you have in your, what I gave you here. Basically, in a nutshell, what it is the Moongate Water Company utilizes our Hornado Bolson. Now that Hornado Bolson is a Bolson that can't be recharged. Based on many estimates, its life expectancy, if we were to have to run on it completely, with our current growth, would be 25 years. And so what is concerning is that Moongate is using that, but they're also wanting to expand to the size of about the city of Las Cruces currently is. So if you were to do that and not use the sea Bolson that we're using right now, they could literally deplete our emergency backup water source. Now keep in mind, two things that are happening currently. One, there's a situation right now where some of our farmers aren't having enough water. Even the city of Las Cruces is somewhat concerned with the amount of water that was negotiated on behalf of EVID and the Bureau of Reclamation. That too is under litigation. Also, we have to keep in mind that what in the event if there should be a terrorist attack and did something to our water supply, we would have to literally shut off the water that we're getting from the Mesilla Bolson and hook up and turn on the water from the Hornado Bolson. So we have to have that capability. Yes, it is true that we currently do have some wells in the Hornado Bolson, but our goal is to slowly wean ourselves out of that and utilize the Mesilla Bolson in its entirety.
Okay, same question?
Oh, excuse me, can I throw one thing out?
Go ahead.
If Moongate, as I mentioned in that paragraph, if they're willing to utilize the Mesilla Bolson, and that could even be a negotiation tool. I mean, instead of us trying to take them over and they're willing to let us help them hook up to the Mesilla Bolson, the lawsuit could go away.
I'll make the same disclaimer because we are in litigation. It's a sensitive subject and not one that can be openly discussed to all levels. But I will say since 1996, Moongate Water and the city of Las Cruces have been in a battle to settle where the boundary lines, where you draw the line in the sand and say this is the city's service area and this is Moongate's service area. And because of that, now we are at a critical stage with our water, and we have to consider how we do joint planning. And there hasn't been any give and take. And if you look at what's on the East Mesa right now, you will find very little commercial zoning or commercial business in business because there is not enough fire flow from Moongate Water. And so on a 4-inch line or a 2-inch line, it's impossible to provide the standards. And so part of the resolution talks about joint planning as a reason for that. It also talks about how we would promote regional water planning. But more importantly is how we have the stricter set of engineering standards so that people and business that are on the East Mesa know that they get the fire protection they need at the time that they need it. Because we can't build business there now because they can't meet that requirement. They don't let the city of Las Cruces be the provider. We're stuck on both ends.
This question, and thank you, Mark, for the question. This question is another example, I think, in city politics where you have to talk about, one, the actual idea, but then two, the process that comes along with it. So first, let's talk about the idea. Should the city use eminent domain to condemn Moongate Water Company? And there's a clear difference here. My opponents have voted yes. I say no. On the idea, why? Because they're a private business, they're a family-owned business, and they're a small business. Like I said earlier, the biggest value to me over the next 4 years is how we put middle-class Las Crucens back to work, how we bring people out of poverty. Any indication that we send to any business anywhere that we're not business-friendly is something that I'm strongly against. Now that's the idea part, that we can have real ideological differences on. But then let's talk about the process. The city came back and told Moongate Water Company that their fair market appraisal was $3.2 million. When they had alone put $1.8 million into litigation, the water rights are probably worth $4 million. The infrastructure, in some estimates, is another $20 million. So in one sense, the idea element, we have a fundamental but real disagreement that we can talk about. In the process sense, it's another indication of where, in the city of Las Cruces, if you don't do something that the city council wants you to do, they're going to make you pay for it. They're going to bully you until you have to pay for it, until you're basically run out of business to where you have no other choice. In so much of what we talk about in the city, it's unfortunate that we can't just have a real intellectual conversation about the idea. We then have to have a follow-up conversation on the process. And that's kind of what's wrong and been wrong over the past 4 to 8 years. And so that's why I'm against this on both levels.
going to start with City Hall. It was almost 25 years ago that that council and mayor decided to buy the Solo building, and there was a grocery store there, and they planned ahead on how they would bring business together for the city all under one roof. 25 years later, we demolished that building, and now you see a 3-story City Hall there. I can tell you from my experience at the first 4 years of my term at the old City Hall, how much time was wasted among staff traveling from one building to another to get to a meeting that might take 20 minutes and then get back to their offices. We now have almost 200 employees at City Hall that at a moment's call at the city manager's office or going down into community development, you can get more, it's more efficient. And it's also efficient for our customers. They're not traveling all over the city saying, oh, this isn't the City Hall you go to, you go down to Alameda. So in the City Hall process, I think that's great. Convention Center, another 20-year project. Something I worked on when I was on the bank and I was on the Chamber of Commerce, and it became very controversial, and here we are 20 years later sitting in City Hall at this Convention Center, which is probably definitely smaller than what we planned in 2004 because of the time delays, and I think that it's paid for, and I know economically, but it's paid for by the visitors that come by the bed tax at the hotel. So it's not taxing our own citizens, it's taking advantage of our tourist situation. The Aquatic Center, that came to us from the legislators. They had a lot of money in 2007, and they wanted to join forces, and our 12 legislators all threw in somewhere between $100,000 to $1 million. I know Lee Rossett and Mary Jane and others threw in $1 million each, Mary Kay Papen, and from that was where the Aquatic Center came from. A small problem with that is when the legislature gives you $12 million, you don't turn it away, and so you want to follow their rules, and then on top of that, the problem was they didn't figure out how we would pay for it operationally, and that has taken some of our general fund.
Thank you for the question. The Aquatic Center, I think Dolores did a great job of describing. I love where it's at. I love that people of all economic levels are able to attend, able to use it. When we talk about City Hall and the Convention Center, again, we need to talk about first the idea and then second the process that came along with it. Did we need the Convention Center right now? I don't know, and I would probably lean towards the size of not yet. And I think it's something that we could have waited for till we could have built it to the best of our capabilities at a level that would function and be able to host more activities. As an example, the Mariachi Conference won't be able to use this facility. And I wonder how many groups out there are able to use the facilities that they intended for the Convention Center that they now still have to use NMSU. When we talk about City Hall, we have to talk about the real perceptions that exist around City Hall. It's really interesting that so many Las Crucens have to drive across City Hall, a building that was supposed to cost, I think, $24 million, now in some estimates has doubled in price. When literally blocks away, the other day I was knocking on doors, a woman in a home 5 blocks away from the Convention Center is a senior citizen who told me that for the first time in her life, she doesn't know if she's going to have enough money at the end of the month to pay for meals. And she lives 5 blocks away from a brand new, amazingly built and constructed City Hall building. We need to work on the perception that Las Crucens have of this grandiose building for politicians while everyone else is struggling to get by. When we compound that with the outrageous, in my mind, salary that the mayor makes, we really have to, again, focus on not just the idea, but the process. Are we doing a good job of communicating and working with Las Crucens so that they understand why we're doing what we're doing? Or, as I would contend, do Las Crucens just see politicians, for better or for worse, whether it's accurate or not, spending money on themselves, benefiting themselves, while everyone else is left struggling to get by? That perception is something that we have to address.
Well, City Hall is really a great move on behalf of the City Council and myself. It's because of the fact that it's what we refer to as cost neutral. When you take the amount that we were spending in the old City Hall and the old Las Cruces City Center, and you equate that to the current cost that we're spending in the new City Hall, they're pretty much equal. And so what we have now is we have a building that will sustain itself for many years to come, 30, 40, 50 years perhaps. And there's currently room right now for expansion. So obviously, it's something there that we're all proud of. It's the center point of the downtown area, and it's basically planning for the future. As far as the convention center, that's something there that needs to be clarified, and appreciate Councilor Connor and her clarification. The monies that was used for that are not taxpayer money. It's people who are visiting the city of Las Cruces. It's used by lodger's fee and lodger tax. And the reason why it was reduced is because, yes, it was supposed to be larger. But we had, from a financial responsibility standpoint, what we did is we took the average of what our hotel occupancy was and what we projected it was going to be. We took that and actually worked backwards. We knew that if we were going to bring in X amount of dollars, this was going to provide so much debt service. And that debt service was going to be able to provide us an X amount of dollars. And for that X amount of dollars is how big of a building we're going to build. That is why this convention center is well ahead of projected schedule. We are projected to, I know it sounds funny, but we're only projected to lose about $100,000 this year. We were projecting to lose $500,000 the first year. We were way ahead of it, and so it's doing very well. And again, it's something there that we were able to work at a good partnership with the New Mexico State University. President Martin and myself and a few others, we sat down. He offered this area. I jumped out in a second. At that time, I was a District 6 councilor. 2 of the 4 areas were meeting with huge opposition. And this actually works very well because of the fact of its access from the highway, be able to get in and out when needed. And again, it lends itself to the university as you're entering New Mexico State University. As far as the aquatic center, it is very historic that we have the entire delegation, both Democrats and Republicans, come together and give their money to build this aquatic center. Plus, we also had the fact that we had Governor Richardson, who had promised $5 million in front of myself and a few others, and that unfortunately didn't come through. That was a big reason also to move forward, because we were going to have not quite an Olympic-sized swimming pool, but a 50-meter by 25-meter pool, although we are still looking to do that in our phase 2. So I think that was a good move. Currently, we're losing it. We're having to subsidize that by about the tune of about $700,000. It costs about $1 million to run, bringing in about $300,000 through fees. However, the city is currently looking at and talking to the YWCA or YMCA to look at expanding some programs there. So if they do a successful job in